World of Warcraft has a massive spotlight on it right now, and the future's looking pretty bright after a very heavy BlizzCon presence and a series of follow-up interviews to help us understand what's ahead. Hey, it's Old, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, Copium in digitized video form. You can help out the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing for more coverage, and catching me live wherever I am. Let's begin with one of my favorite things to do, incorrectly guessing when the heck things are happening. Because we have some pretty big news on the future of WoW thanks to interviews with two of WoW's daddies, Ian Hazzikostas and Morgan Day, and the bigger daddies, Hallie Longdale and John Haidt. We got some big high-level stuff. We can expect 3 more updates before the World Within expansion launches sometime in the fall. We're going to get a Fated season. We will get story updates that will lead us into the War Within storyline. But what does that really mean? Fans brought up concerns that faster expansions would mean faster timelines, which in a way is like paying more for less. The WoW team is trying to dispel this notion, pointing out that one of the reasons why expansions may take longer are the infamous lulls between the final raid and the next expansion's pre-patch, and I want to be very specific here. Yeah, this Emergency raid will be Dragonflight's last, but when I think lull, I think of something like Siege of Orgrimmar back in Miss Pandaria, which wasn't just a year-long wait, it was a year-long wait with almost literally nothing added in between. That in this day and age is pretty crazy talk. I've convinced myself, and I'm gonna push this narrative onto you. This is my attempt at being a influencer. That the WoW team is aiming for almost 0 lulls at the end of this expansion. That's their goal going forward. Now I get it. We can argue that a Fated season, or basically going through the same 3 raids for a few months, is still no new raids, but I'm reminded from previous patches in Dragonflight and other expansions, we don't exactly need a raid to move a story forward. We just need a story. We're going to be challenged with this idea, which is actually a reminder that this is not a world of raidcraft. Now here's where I'm a little bit stuck, and maybe you folks at home and elsewhere can help brainstorm some ideas with me. The WoW team is saying that there'll be 3 more content patches before War Within, and the expansion is going to launch in the fall, which at the earliest is late September of 2024. That's going to be a bit over 8 months from now the week 10.2 launched, so how would this work? Let's pretend that not included in this 3-patch estimate is the pre-patch for War Within, which is usually like a month. And also pretend that the WoW team is also going to push a patch every 8 or so weeks like they have been. There's an immediate problem with this though. Like if they were to do something like that, War Within would launch late May of 2024, and knowing that the alpha is supposed to start in the spring, that's obviously not going to be realistic. So instead, let's go with the kind of Legion model. Let's go for, instead of 8, let's go for 11 weeks between patches, and we still have this 1-month pre-patch. This will put us at a late July launch, which is better. It even fits when we consider a short alpha and a beta phase, just like with Dragonflight that starts in the spring. So this is actually a good starting point for making predictions because it just works. But personally, I'm kind of stuck on this thing saying that it's going to be out in the fall. So let's play with the numbers just a little bit more. This time, a little bit something different. Let's keep the 11-week patches, okay? But also let's have a pre-expansion patch that's longer than the usual 5 weeks. Let's go with 8 weeks. So now we're at more like an August launch. It's not quite fall, but close to previous expansion launches like with Legion and Battle for Azeroth. But what if the WoW team did something a little bit more extreme, like make the pre-expansion patch not even a pre-expansion patch exactly, but more like the unofficial or the official prologue of War Within? I guess what I'm trying to say is, what if it's also, the pre-expansion patch is also an 11-week patch? Now we're encroaching on that very late summer or early fall release. And from this, what do we have? We're going to have a 5-month Season 3 and a 5-month Season 4, which would include some pre-expansion systems, notably parts of the Warband system. So along with the Fated stuff, we're going to get account shared banks, we're going to get transmog unlocks and the camp screen and more, maybe not too much more. I mean, like hero talents, that's like a level 71 and higher thing, and the old talent system, that probably won't get very many changes outside of what we usually see in other patches, since that's not going to be touched. Now I know I'm cheating because I'm relying a lot on the pre-expansion patch to be like way more than what it is currently, but This also fits. I find 11-week patches to be, for the most part, perfectly fine, and as long as the WoW team continues to add things in these patches like the Fated Season, I'm good. Like, as long as we get story updates and features and more, this will fit. The WoW team tried to make it clear that when they want faster expansions, they don't mean one-year expansions, like they're not talking about shrinkflation. They mostly mean attacking the lull, and I hope it's done tastefully. Because many who embrace the lull, they use it as a kind of period to wind down. Like, okay, we're done with the progression and everything, now let's kind of go back and do achievements and collect things that we've missed along the way, let's goof off with alts, that sort of thing. Now, 11 weeks might be long, and the fall release could be a very generous estimate. Maybe they're shooting for 10 weeks per patch, or maybe fewer, but what I'm just trying to say is that a model like this works, and it keeps up with the almost scary consistency that we've been seeing in Dragonflight. A roadmap is going to be on its way, and when it's ready, I'm sure that most of our questions will be answered. So enough of predictions for now, let's get back to more of what we've learned this week. The Fated Season is going to feel like the Shadowlands Fated Season from before, but with one very big difference: there's no Fated raid affixes. The team has heard feedback that this last season should more or less feel like a nostalgic victory lap that we shouldn't have to, with encounters that we don't really need to relearn, and I'm totally good with that. Let me farm up transmog and achievements because, as said, we're done, we're wrapping up, and I'll happily replace the lull with Fated or whatever it is they're going to call it. Here's something else we learned: archaeology as we know it isn't coming back. There's no triangulation minigame, and, well, no archaeology profession has been announced. The team said that we're going to get a series of events and features and quests that's going to offer that feel of exploration and discovering history and that sort of thing. I think to myself, hey, maybe Secrets of Azeroth, which I found to be a whole lot of fun as long as you just didn't follow a guide. Professions are largely going to remain intact, but the team is going to look more closely at inspiration stats and the dependence that we had on it during Dragonflight, as well as, of course, the crafting order business. Funny enough, they are keen on the idea of NPC crafters showing up on the work order system to help out folks who might be on dead servers, so think of it like the quests that we're already seeing each week, only it's going to be, a little bit more immersive, a little bit more flavorful, and that'll be neat to see. Cross-faction queuing is on the horizon in cases where time walking is, it's like the only way in by hitting that Q button. How it's handled is still going to be up in the air. Like, the team still doesn't want people to be put into a cross-faction group without their consent, but it remains to be seen how exactly that's going to be handled. Like, for example, having a toggle to say that, hey, I'm cool with grouping with people from the other faction, that would kind of cut into the player pool. It would cut it into two uneven halves, and overall queues would be longer for everybody. Honestly, I think this is where surveys would help make that determination. We had a few clarifications on Warband. For now, transmog unlocks in War Within are still going to have class restrictions, at least for the legacy gear, and I should explain this a little bit. So let's say that you run the Sepulchre raid from Shadowlands, which has tier tokens. If you're a certain class, you're not going to be able to just get any old token and then use it and learn the appearances for all of those classes. You're still going to need to be that class in order to learn that appearance. But they did also open themselves up for feedback, so dip them pitchforks in venom and get them ready. During the Q&A, someone asked if they could opt their characters out of warbands, as in have certain characters not benefit from all this account-wide stuff. Now, the WoW team's answer was no, but it did open up an interesting conversation, and feel free to jump in on this one. Would it feel weird for a new character to jump into the world and then realize that said character has accessed pretty much everything on the map, even though they may have never explored it themselves? Where do we draw the line when something ought to be character specific versus player specific, and how would those options work in a way that's not confusing? They also made clear the technical limitations of warbands, something that I was curious about because I happen to run two accounts at once. Some of you might be familiar with this, where you're not really able to do two pet battles on both accounts at once. One client is just going to be locked out, you'll get an error message, and the same is expected to happen for some warband features. For example, if one client opens up the account-wide bank to get some stuff out, client number 2 won't be able to open the bank at the same time. And on the camp screen, you're only going to be able to see characters on the accounts that you're actually logged onto. You won't be able to populate it with characters from different WoW accounts. I know that's more edge case territory, but I'm at least glad that they addressed it in this Q&A. Also, portals that are unlocked from Mythic Plus will now be account bound, meaning that the gold cost of plus 20 carries is going to go way up, which also might lower the WoW token price a little bit more, and that'll be kind of nice. It's kind of crazy how things can change in 2 years, huh? Like 2 years ago, we were waiting for patch 9.2 and Zereth Mortis. WoW and the Blizzard team were still reeling from lawsuits, and they were barely starting to get themselves righted for WoW's upcoming future. And then here we are, this much later, we're now in a world of WoW where we can play with the other faction. Lots of stuff is account shared with more to come. There's tons of cosmetic rewards to choose from that we get for almost free each month. Flying is like, hey, yeah, sure, here you go. We get tons of different rewards. There's no borrowed power and hopefully no lulls. And of course, there's like zero content. So for folks who share my particular playstyle, World of Warcraft is in a very, very good place, and it's going in this very promising new direction. And I'm excited. I am low energy excited, but now I want to hear it from you. How are you feeling after what has been, kind of a whirlwind week? This next part is going to be mostly me talking about BlizzCon. If you're not interested, skip to the end, or it was nice to see you. Hope to see you next time. I figure I should just make that clear. I'm going to talk about what was great and what sucked about Blizzard's return to the public stage after 4 years, or maybe it kind of felt like 10, I don't know. Because during the convention, I read about a lot of takes from people, and I heard a lot of takes from con goers as well, and now I want to give my own from my perspective. Coming as someone who was invited, but also came along with friends who couldn't enjoy the same sort of access that I could. So first I'm going to cover what sucked about it and the anxiety over me possibly walking into this disaster fest. It started building up as we learned a few things. Before we even went, I started to learn a few things like the schedule. There were going to be no big panels outside of those being held in the arena. We were already thinking to ourselves okay, but what are we going to do between these panels, or after the panels that we care about are done? I guess we just walk around, right? We're not sure where to go or what to do. The day before, I kind of dropped my friends and my wife off at the badge pickup place because I was going to pick up mine elsewhere. I'll have more on that in a bit. And we met up later for lunch, and I was I met up with them. They had all their stuff, and I was like, all right, dude, okay, what'd you get in your goodie bags, right? Because we knew about the backpacks and nothing else, and they gave me kind of blank stares, and they were like, we got nothing. That's all they got. They just got this bag, an empty bag. I don't know if there's some weird COVID protocol thing, don't put things into their bags, but this was a big deal to me. I was pissed off about this. It's probably the thing that I repeated most throughout BlizzCon. So, at the previous BlizzCons, we still didn't get very much, but very least, the bag that we got, it contained, something very important. It contained information. It had a map. It had something to remind us of what's what, where's this and that, and so on and so forth. But we had nothing this year unless we happened to reach out and grab a map from an info desk, I guess, and I never happened to chance buy one. But I found that super frustrating, along with the fact that there was no BlizzCon app either. Now, to be fair, you don't exactly need an app to get notifications for panels that only happen in one place, but there's a certain blindness there that I couldn't get over. It would have been real nice if there was a physical map in every bag that said, for example, very clearly, here is where the entrances are, and here is where lines will start for opening ceremonies for a general admission, or portal pass people, or media people. And as for the con floor itself, it's really kind of up to everyone else's interpretation. Everyone's got different stories. Some folks suffered through terrible crowds and lines. On the first day, my friends, they were in a line that extended past the convention center and the hotels and into residential areas where, and meanwhile, I got in a half hour early and I was put into a gaming chair. At one point, while my friends and I were all resting our feet, I think this was the second day of the convention, we struck conversation with another con person, including a young person who has been wanting to go to BlizzCon since he was in the 3rd grade and finally made it 10 years later, only to be pretty disappointed at what he experienced, and that kind of broke my heart. I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said that he was hoping for more things to do, and he was being really, really polite about it, but he wanted things to get, something to make him and the guildmates that he was with feel a bit more special, especially after spending like so much money on tickets and travel and food and a place to sleep. So I don't like using the word entitlement, but come on, like taking the time and money away to go to BlizzCon or any convention, it earns you some sort of treatment, right? And beyond the smaller but still important stories of disorganization, miscommunication, and more that happened during this event, I'm gonna oversimplify my critique of this year's BlizzCon. It just didn't do nearly enough to make its attendees feel extra special. Like, some people see BlizzCons in the past and they think of the stuff that no one else can get through normal means, like special swag that is exclusive to the con, exclusive in-game goodies like a mount or a bear or a costume or whatever, and the chance to playtest things that those other people won't get to do for months or maybe even ever. People who go to BlizzCon, they want something to lord over others, and those who are looking for like games to play and stuff to take home, well, folks at home, they got to take advantage of just about all of that without all the traveling and pomp and circumstance. So that empty bag that people got felt a little bit emptier. As someone who's been going to every BlizzCon since 2008, I wasn't even born back then, I felt that emptiness, and so did my friends. Like, there was no War Within demo. I really thought there was going to be one, and turns out there wasn't. There was 10.2 stuff, which I can play now, and there was Season of Discovery stuff, which everyone's going to get access to in a few short weeks. There were cool decorations and set pieces, but you can't really put that into a bag. The immersive visual experience was just a facade, and the money for that could have been better spent on chairs. But again, as someone who has gone to many BlizzCons and understands the horrors of game development and drinks copium by the gallon, I get it when we got what we got. In 2019, we got a somewhat playable version of Shadowlands Bastion Zone, and hey, it was neat, but then we learned months later, especially after the Blizzard lawsuit, that putting that demo together, it threatened to break the backs of the team because largely the expansion as a whole wasn't that far in development. The WoW team suffered through something a lot of game devs suffered through in the days of like E3 and similar conventions, where they're pressured to put something together for the sake of showing something off to the media and attendees. We saw a reflection of this new attitude at BlizzCon, where if it's not ready, it's not ready, and they're not going to waste dev time that could be used on a more efficient schedule to actually put the real game in people's hands. On the other hand, 10.2 and Season of Discovery, it's ready to go, so let's show that off instead in a kind of nice surprise. I'm still sad that I didn't get to brag about the playtesting like I did with Shadowlands, but at the very least I understand. The industry as a whole is moving away from those limited exclusive demos. I said this a bunch of times over the years, but you don't exactly go to BlizzCon for the news. You go to share in a certain experience. You go to meet or reunite with friends under this banner, this umbrella of shared energy. You can and ought to go there to get cool stuff, but also to bring home with you memories that you can't replicate anywhere else. I got to see friends who I haven't seen in like 4 years, some who have stopped playing WoW understandably, but still have a good connection with. And to Blizzard's credit, it feels, and okay, I think my perception is all jacked up here, but it feels as if this BlizzCon put more focus on personal connections than previous ones. Now, it's one thing to have and to want a voice actors or artist panel to see your favorite people up on stage, but it's something else to have so many opportunities to meet and greet these people at autograph signings or just seeing them on the show floor. I noticed no shortage of developers and attendees who would get into, fun, long conversations over a snack or over maybe at like one of the bars. That level of accessibility and schmoozing is one of those formless but very special take-home souvenirs. And I might be wrong about this, but it kind of seemed like there was a bigger presence of streamers and content creators too, with chances to talk with them and do photo ops and such. It could have been better. I heard that Portal Pass people were promised exclusive dev time and they weren't taking care of very well on that front either. I haven't even talked about my experience, and in all of my years of going, this was the best BlizzCon ever for me, all right? I want to make that clear. For me, obviously for specific and unique reasons. Now, I said my friends went to pick up their badges at the regular place. Meanwhile, I went to pick up my badge at a mixer off-site later in the afternoon, and I got to see like all of the who's who in World of Warcraft. I met the contact who typically would help calm me down before a big dev interview, and I saw creators when they're not behind that veneer of social media and content. They're just people. And it was really cathartic to run into developers who would recognize me and come up to me and then thank me for the energy that I put into the coverage. Like, dude, they see me and they appreciate the balanced takes that I share, and that's the goal. Like, when you're in front of this camera, like right here, wondering if your face and voice carry that far, it's this unforgettable feeling to see it pay off when someone, when a viewer or a fan, when they say that, oh, they love your videos and streams, and you can't put a price on that. So for me, this year, I've never felt more seen or more recognized. Like, I am so honored and so happy to have met all of you, but also I'm sorry to everyone who I missed and that I wanted to like be in bed and sleeping by 11 because, dude, I'm hella old, and I was nervous as all heck during the whole time. And it was comforting when folks would be like, yeah, me too, I'm just a big nerd. And these are like other creators, these are like huge personalities, and they're kind of feeling the same way as me. And of course, probably the biggest things is going to go to Taliesin and Nevitel for being very, very welcoming to me and for inviting me to go to their recording and to their roundtable. Like, imagine this true story. Imagine watching the recording when Taliesin just rips on Bellular, and then there he is sitting next to you, right next to you, and he's just laughing his ass off. I just want to make it clear that, beyond the takes and the opinions and the bloviating and the reactions, we're all just people talking about this game. We're all, we're just people having fun talking about it and sharing that passion with others. So for me, this was the best, I guess, not so objectively, but this was like the best and the worst BlizzCon in years. Depending on what you wanted out of it, it might have been this awful, no good experience that didn't feel like it was worth the money at all. But on the other hand, some memories and interactions are priceless, and there were more opportunities to have that than ever before. It just happened to be at that place at that time, and it took a lot to get there. If there is another BlizzCon, my hopes are that the development cycles line up in such a way that there's going to be more to play and mess around and look at, and that there's a freaking map that comes in the bag. Like, dude, minimum effort, guys, and that's the show. Oh, crap. And then there was a patch this week. Yeah, right. Boy. So in all seriousness, a pretty big patch dropped this week, and it's turning out to be as predicted. It's one half carnival for people to collect transmog, and one half contest between sweaties, all pushing to get the renown as high as they can so they can get something. I don't quite understand what the stress is over, honestly. We can get regular flying like minutes into this patch. Now, to be fair, I'm downplaying this because I didn't even bother following my own advice for rep grinding, especially when we consider this, this might be the last time we'll be able to do something like this, right? Because next expansion, we're going to have shared reputation. Odds are good, no more using multiple alts to grind up rep or farm multiple copies of currency per alt. Like the other day, I used 8 alts to farm for 8 seed bloom to quickly collect this full transmog set. In account-wide WoW, this might actually take me the intended full 8 weeks to do kind of the same thing. But hey, that's what the players want. Ooh, account-wide stuff, whoopee. Next week, we're going to have more full reactions to the patch, which will include the upcoming raid and other season story stuff, and of course, the immediate aftermath. And since we did not get it this week, we might have a developer update on the upcoming patch 10.2.5. So next week is going to be huge for news and for new stuff to do in WoW. I'd love for you to join me for the coverage. More Twitch drops and giveaways are happening next week, so come through and join me live. Like this video, subscribe for more coverage, and dude, thank you to the folks watching me on Twitch, the beloved patrons, and to you, viewer, whether you're new or if you've been watching my ass since like 2016, thank you for making it to the end. After this BlizzCon and meeting so many of you folks, soaking in all the energy, it's got me like that much more excited to be part of this community. So off I go to play some more Star Ocean 2, because it's been a fantastic game, and well, 2023 has just been great. So take care, folks. I'll see you for the next thing. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.